Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter and analyst for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. On today's episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by Mike Garcia of Lakers Draft on Substack. Mike, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you for joining. So we last spoke officially on record before the draft, and you casually threw out at the end of the show, I asked you, all right, who are a couple guys that might not be there for the Lakers, but would be your dream targets? If the Lakers have the opportunity to trade up, who would you like them to try and go get? One of the guys, Morez Johnson, ends up being arguably the biggest riser in the draft and goes from a projected mid-first round guy to going 9th to Dallas. And that was a bit of a surprise. And then Cameron Carr ends up slipping to the Lakers, and they technically trade up and purchase the Knicks pick, but ends up going in a range that he was not projected to go, and then ends up having this incredible summer league stretch that we saw between the Cali Classic and Las Vegas. So I want to open with Cameron Carr and ask you first, just go back a few weeks. What was your reaction to Cameron slipping to the Lakers, and with each pick passing, just the anticipation of him potentially being available? And then what have been your impressions of Carr's game over the past month as a Laker?
Sure. So one of the things I like to do when I'm watching the draft is I'm kind of looking for a pattern or a theme. One of the things we don't have access to is understanding what the goals of each team has when it comes to the draft. Some teams want athleticism, some want skills, some want a combination of both, some want a project to work on that they can develop, and so on and so forth. And one of the things I noticed with this particular draft is the guys that are smaller were slipping down the draft. So we've spoken about Cameron Carr, how he's 175 or 185. I'm just going to round up to that 185 pounds because it makes me feel better. But two other guys that were also slipping down were Ibuka Okori, a player that I had lottery ranked because he's great at attacking the basket. And another player is LeBaron Philon, who ended up going to the 76ers. All three of these guys did very well during the summer league. They were able to get what they want and basically show their game. And I was really excited to see that at least one of these guys was actually going to fall to the Lakers pick. When we talked about the Lakers draft, even just last year, I briefly mentioned kind of dreaming about Adou Thiero wanting that athletic wing, and then he just so happened to fall to 36. So I don't know if it's wish casting on my part. Maybe it is. I'll take it. But I'm really happy that the Lakers made the move to move up the one spot in order to get Cameron Carr in the first place. And I was really excited about the pick because, we're looking for athleticism, some level of size. In his case, is basically wingspan and length, and at least one or two skills that kind of work with Luka, preferably. And in his case, it's a lot of off-ball skills altogether. So I was really excited about that overall. And then in terms of his summer league, I was more impressed by how he played throughout the summer. It was better than I anticipated. One of the things that came to mind was how physical the game is being officiated starting from last year. And I kind of felt that physicality would continue into the summer league. And I'm thinking, oh, well, Philon and Okori and Carr are all falling down the draft. Maybe they're going to be affected by this more physical play. And it turns out, they all fight for position or defensively, So I was really excited to see that on the floor, and just watching Cameron Carr looking natural at what he does, which is kind of the most important part as a rookie. Like, what do you do best? Oh, I'm an off-ball player. I can get my shot off ball. I come off curls. I come off screens. I can spot up. And he was able to do all of that. So I was really excited about how everything worked out during the Summer Pro League.
I had a question here in the chat that I'm just curious what your reaction is to this. Bro, Cameron Carr shot 19% from three in Summer League. What's the hype? He cannot put the ball on the floor and create for himself. What do you make of that characterization?
Well, AJ DeBonza shot 9% behind the arc, and he just played a couple games.
He's pretty
Darren
good.
Peterson, probably, yeah, he's pretty good. Top 3 pick, right? Darren Peterson probably shot around mid-20s, below 40% overall from the field. What we're looking for is not percentages, specifically speaking. We're just looking to see if they can get the shots that they want. And it says a lot when basically, this is the top tier of the draft class all playing in the same field with some relative veterans, some guys that are on the edge of trying to make a team and whatever else it might be. And the adjustment is quick. Were they all able to get the shots that they want? Yes. I would also point out that Cameron Carr missed a game because I think he had a thumb contusion. So halfway through Summer League, he basically had that little glove on part of his hand anyway. And I noticed that shots that were falling early on didn't have as much arc, or they came off his fingertips a little bit faster than they usually would. So I wouldn't take that percentage as seriously, but he was still able to get a few shots. And honestly, the way he was being scouted towards the latter games says a lot about how he was stepping up offensively and was becoming an offensive threat.
I agree. I think that the big thing for me with Carr was just the 3-level scoring that he flashed. And no, the 3-point shooting was not up to where you would like it. And I would also note it was better, to your point with the injury and the glove. Like, he was shooting better in the Cali Classic than he was. Obviously, it was fewer games at the Cali Classic. But to me, I mean, there's a ton of just off-ball utility, and in projecting how he's going to be used and his potential role for next season, I think he has certain tools in his toolkit that no one else on this bench has. And so when I think about because I think the big thing, of course, is like, how is this going to project at the parent level, right? Like, you want to see the progress in summer league, you want to see the progress in the preseason at the G League level if he ends up playing with Coachella Valley, but you also want to see how that's going to translate with the parent team. And to me, just some of the ways that they used him, I think, are ways that they can use him. And then he can just do the simple things of spot up and make open threes, or attack, run the lane in transition, and like those just basic finishing things that the Lakers need him to do at a certain level. But I also really liked what we saw with him coming off of pin downs and curls, and just reading the defense at a certain level where it was like, okay, if you're going to play off of me, you're going to be in drop, I'm going to hit this little pull up jumper. Or if you're going to even kind of corral me a bit, I can get to my floater, or I can get to the rim. And then obviously there were some times where he flared out for threes. So I liked the processing against the defense, and whatever was the scheme of that given night, he had different ways to counter that, which to me was notable, and left me feeling encouraged about how he's going to fit with the team. And to me, just projects like a rotation guy right now.
Yeah, I mean, just generally speaking, overall, there's this idea that 40% 3-point shooters in the college level directly translate to NBA high percentage, and that just isn't the case. I mean, Reed Shepherd shot 52% behind the arc during his last year for, I want to say, Kentucky, but I think he's high 30s, low 40s now. It's not 52%. Like, that's an outrageously amazing number. And that was mostly off of catch and shoots. And what happened? He's getting adjusted to NBA level speed, NBA level physicality, and just the level of contest changes everything. Even at the summer league level, it changes. Just seeing NBA sized players coming up to contest now, right? And I think, if anything, we were kind of fortunate just to see that level of floater touch. I wasn't expecting that so much. I saw that like little touch semi push shot around the 15-foot area when he was being defended a little bit over the top, and I was like, oh, that's in the bag. Okay, well, great. That's just one more tool in the arsenal. And you mentioned the 3-level skill, so these are all the things that I'm very hopeful for, especially in Cameron Carr. And now that Coach Redick can think of him as, I have another shooter on the team, and he's this athletic guy with a great reach, and he can get a shot, maybe I'll implement certain plays for him to get him specifically open. And then on top of that, there's already Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic on the floor, so I don't expect him to see that level of kind of immediate defensive pressure right away. So there's a kind of an easing period into the rookie year before things ramp up by the time it's midseason. But we've seen everything that Cameron Carr can show on the basketball floor, and it's been fun to watch.
What are some areas of improvement for him, or areas he should be focusing on throughout the rest of summer?
I mean, the most specific thing that everybody's kind of pointed to is the strength, and I definitely get that. But there's the other aspect is, I want to say, conditioning. They go from a 40-minute game on a slower pace from college all the way to 24-second shot clock. Well, we're trying to run an offense in 16, and then these games are 48 minutes. They may only play 18, 2 shifts, 3 shifts max if they're lucky. But just the pace within the half court is faster than it is at the college level, and so is the physicality. And there's also an adjustment for shooters in how they come off of screens and how they utilize those screens at specific angles to actually get open in the first place. Defenders at the NBA level are just smarter, quicker, bigger, faster. And those windows close very quickly. So it's, oh, how am I being defended? What's the best way to do it? Let me do this at the best that I can. And this is all the glimmer of light that I'm going to see at the rim. That's my shot. And if a rookie player, specifically Cameron Carr in this case, can start making those shots, that's what they're looking for. So conditioning, a little bit of strength will go a long way. I'm not the biggest proponent of adding 10, 15 pounds in the summer. I think that changes the body a lot within a short amount of time. It's already a long season for them. And then after that, it's defense. It's having the correct defensive posture to absorb contact on the chest, especially with the level of physicality at the next level. Some guys think you have to be barrel chested in order to handle the contact. You don't necessarily. I mean, be awesome, but there's only so many Adou Thieros in the world. But if you're holding the right posture and absorb the contact that way and just hold your spot, even if there's a little bit of give, that's a potential charge call. You're fighting for your position defensively. It's not immediately a defensive foul, and you're still able to fight. So it's not so much about absorbing the contact as well as maintaining balance and posture for the next offensive move or whatever else it might be. Those are the biggest transitions for him as a rookie.
I echo everything you just said. And I think for me, there's a couple of general areas, which you already touched on both of them, that like really stood out to me with him on film. First, sometimes that creating that separation with guys where you would see guys bumping him on his path around a screen, guys grabbing the jersey, doing the little dirty tricks of the trade. And that would either cause a slight delay with him getting around the screen, or I think because of the lack of separation at times, it would cause him to launch up these kind of wild jumpers quickly, like trying to like just sort of fearing that the defender was right on his hip or right behind him or something. And just sometimes that lack of separation caused, I think, to him to just overreact or rush some decisions. So that to me, while like that could be a decision-making and processing part of his game, I also view it to some degree as like a strength, and just can you absorb that contact, or can you dish out that contact and create that separation that way when trying to navigate screens offensively. And then the inverse was, to your point about guys going through his chest, I thought there was times where on drives or in transition, or if he's the help guy rotating over, someone could just give him the forearm shiver, or just put the shoulder in his chest and just dislodge him, move him back, and then easily score at the rim. So that's the thing for me and it also to me probably limits him to primarily being a 2 or just a backcourt defender to start his career. Whereas I don't know if I think eventually, depending on how he continues to develop and progress and put on 5'10", however much weight and strength he puts on, maybe he could scale into playing threes. Like, he's got the physical tools to do it. He's got the wingspan, the standing reach, and the vertical. But right now, I think putting him on threes, or even somehow, switching on to fours, I think that would be a limitation for him.
Yeah, one of the things I think about when a shooter is coming off the screen is, do they just kind of like stand there and then they curl off when they see that screen come ahead of them? Or do they bump their defender first to try to get that initial separation and then come off at a specific angle just to buy that extra little bit of extra distance get the window to get the shot. And I don't recall seeing that initial bump. I saw those angles and then they were pretty clean. But even as Summer League progressed, the contests were getting a little bit tighter here and there. And I know some of those 3-point shots were end of shot clock and had a little bit more distance. He was shooting from 25, 26 feet instead of right at the line. That's comfortably within his range and everything. But that's still not the most ideal. What you want is the on-balance shot in rhythm, in time, without being rushed. And that's the adjustment in order for him to get his offensive game going.
Final thing with Carr before we move on to Adou. Do you project him right now as a rotation guy, just based on where the Lakers are at with their wing depth? And they obviously have added Zaire Williams and Matisse Thybulle over the past week, and that wing room is starting to get a bit crowded. I think right now he projects again more as a guard, and there's the semantics of guard versus wing versus forward, and it all kind of blends together to some degree on some teams. But right now I would pencil him in as the backup shooting guard behind, I guess, Austin offensively, and then depending on the matchup, Austin or Grimes defensively. But where are you at with his readiness to play a rotation role, or do you think this is going to be more of a slow burn where he needs a bit of time in training camp, preseason, early season to really start emerging maybe December, January?
Well, the good news about this offseason is the Lakers really shored up the guard core. Like when I see Grimes, Sexton, Luka, and Reeves, it's like, oh, we could play them any of combination of two of those guys at any given game, and then it's an effective lineup. So if in this case Carr is the fifth guard, that's kind of like an ideal situation. I see him as a guard initially just for the physicality aspect, and I would like for him to utilize that standing reach and that wingspan as an advantage at shooting guard specifically. If he was playing three, then that kind of gets nullified a little bit and breaks even. But if the length is there and then the athleticism there is there, and then he's an off-ball guard and maybe he gets a shift or two, I'm not going to be mad at that at all, especially if it's right next to Sexton, who's going to attack the rim. It's going to be Reeves. It's going to be Doncic. Those guys are going to set everything up for the role players. So the Lakers at least have the option to do it. I prefer more of a slow burn because, to me, this is the longest year of a rookie player, college, tournament, um, player workouts, summer league, the 1 or 2 months that they take, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I guess we're in training camp already, and it feels kind of sudden, and then they all hit the wall by the time it's February, March. We're not trying to run into the wall. We're trying to ease our way past it so we can get some effectiveness after that little time period. So I would like to see more of that slow burn personally.
I think you should play 12 to 15 minutes from the jump, and then we'll see if that turns into something more. But to me, he should be in the top 9 or 10 as the roster stands, right? They could, of course, make some additional moves, and we maybe have a different perspective. But I would like to see him be like at least a 2-shift player.
Look, I have no problem seeing lob dunks coming out of a shooting guard position for the Lakers. I mean,
exactly.
If Luka,
exactly.
If Reeves and Luka could do that too, that'd be amazing. But I'll take it out of Cameron Carr.
Speaking of lob dunks, that was a perfect transition into our next subject. Adou Thiero, who had some of the plays of Summer League, including that incredible lob dunk that was reminiscent of, it's very Blake Griffin-esque, Amari Stoudemire-esque. Like that was just, that was a special finish. And again, arguably the play of the summer. Where are you at with Adou and the development that he showed this summer? I think we saw some more on-ball reps with him and those low gathers, kind of like a running back, just knifing his way, sometimes just bulldozing his way through the lane. But the array of finishes, I think the finishing really stood out as something that progressed. The passing, the driving kick game, and just really coming into his own in terms of leveraging his physical tools on both sides of the ball. What was your impression of Adou this summer?
Initially, I kind of wanted him to shut down Summer League early because I thought he was doing too well, too fast. And after all of those highlight dunks, I can't believe he had 10 highlight dunks. That's a lot for the amount of games that they had. I was watching how he was landing after every dunk because I'm like, oh, protect the knee, protect the leg, protect the knee, protect the leg, right? So the Lakers kept coming out in transition. They kept playing 2-3 zone. They were being effective within it. They were competing every single game, and I was really happy about it. But more importantly, I appreciated how he changed his game after game one in the California Classic. He was seeking every shot, every opportunity that he could get to put the ball in the basket, and it's like the game just wasn't coming to him, and he was forcing all of the action. And then I remember tweeting online saying, we don't need you to get 20 points. Just make simple plays. I don't care if it's 8 points or 2 assists, whatever it might be. Those small plays are going to be loud from him. And then the game kind of came more naturally to him. He was a lot more opportunistic in terms of help defense. I especially love that part. He wasn't, going foul crazy defensively, which I think is really, really like that's a big step, especially in this summer league. And I didn't see any shots that were like really wild and out of the box for him. Everything was like, oh, well, I've got a touch, and then I could count 1 second, 2 second balls already out of his hands. And it was either a finish, a dribble move, or it was a kick out to a corner. And I'm like, this is exactly what I was hoping for, at least when he initially got drafted. He was just kind of hurt all season. And now we're seeing that short range playmaking, the finishing around the hoop, the attacking, the opportunistic attacking. And now, towards the end of summer league, defenders were starting to space him a little bit more for that 3-point shot. I was very hopeful when last year for South Bay, he made 5 3-pointers in a row. And I was just watching that tape over and over, like, oh, are these movement shots? Or are they just leaving him open? Or is he in rhythm? Well, in that case, he was on fire that night. It didn't matter which angle behind the arc, he just hit a ball. And this time around, it wasn't so much like he made just 1 or 2 for the entire week or the entire couple weeks. But what I liked was even when he took those shots, they were in rhythm. And even if they were short or just wide, whatever else it might be, it didn't feel like a rush shot. It didn't feel like he hesitated into it. He just kind of took it as a fluid shot within the offense. And I was like, yeah, I'm not mad at that at all. That's the right shot to take in that situation. The rest of the highlights, though, I mean, the dunking already speaks for itself. I was very impressed by the defensive playmaking, coming around the back defensively, walling off guys on a drive and then just stealing the basketball. I was kind of expecting more in terms of shot blocking. That's me being picky. But this summer, the past 2 or 3 weeks, is exactly the highlight film that I saw from him coming out of Arkansas in the first place. So to see it again, except at the NBA level, is like really loud for me and speaks well of how he improved with his decision making and his skill maturity overall. How about you?
I agree. I think the big thing for me is if he's going to play that Vando role, and it's not a perfect comparison or perfect analog, but I think in terms of the rotation spot, that might be a legitimate competition in terms of which one of those offensively challenged or at least shooting challenged big wing / forwards ends up in the rotation. I think Adou really proving he can be a threat around the rim. I think that was a sneaky area of his game that he had kind of struggled with at the NBA level in his limited stints this past season. And just seeing him slipping out and just the finishing, the patience, and whether it was like, catching and just a little subtle head fake and drawing the foul, or catching, letting the guy jump and pass him and then dunking it, or just just these little subtleties and nuances within his game that I felt like, to your point, like the playing under more control, and just honestly, like, of course, I think he needs to shoot at a certain level to reach a certain ceiling, and it's going to just be really difficult to be like a starting or closing level guy, I think, if he can't shoot at least like low 30s, in my opinion, right? Like you just rarely see guys out there who cannot shoot at that level at a minimum of that, just, forward wing type. But as if he could get there, that obviously changes his ceiling and his trajectory. But if he can't, he still needs to be able to be someone who can finish advantages, right? And that's the big thing, playing off of Luka and Austin. And so if he can run the baseline or operate out of the dunker spot and catch and finish, or catch and draw fouls, or catch and, oh, they're sinking in on me, let me kick it out to the opposite corner. Like, just making those reads and making those reads quickly and making those reads correctly, I think is a step in the right direction with him. So again, it's like, he doesn't have to be this like great scorer or great shot creator or even advantage extender necessarily, but he does need to be able to finish. I think that's been the biggest thing that's been the limiting factor with Vando, is like, Vando does struggle catching the ball in traffic, or does struggle catching the ball and making those quick decisions. And I think that's even hurt him more than the lack of the 3-point shot. It's like, okay, well, if you can't shoot, you better be able to grab an offensive rebound and put the ball back up, not grab the offensive rebound and get stripped, or grab the offensive rebound and get blocked. And like, just little things like that, where I think I started to see like what the role really could be in a way that I didn't think we quite saw last year.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about Thiero that I just saw from his last year of college was how he attacks closeouts, because I'm expecting defenders to just close out short on him and then, make him force a bad shot. But he's anticipating that every time, and then he has this left-handed in-out dribble, crossover to the right, and then he's at the paint because stride length, he's quick, and then the defender is anticipating like 2 juke moves simultaneously, and that cuts 23 feet into 5 feet, and then he's at the rim. And it's pretty quick. So I'm excited about that aspect, that he created those moves out of the corners, out of the diagonal, and even out of the high post, and he looked really comfortable doing it. And just having that one move in the back pocket, even though it's going to be somewhat predictable, he can, he's always going to be 1 to 2 dribbles away from him finishing at the rim. And if he could just do that, I mean, by all means, I'm all for playing him. I think in general, I lean towards playing him over Vanderbilt, because in my mind, the general strength and size of the Laker team from last year compared to this year is completely different, right? Because last year was LeBron James. It's LeBron. Then there's Marcus Smart. It's Marcus Smart. And then even Aiton's like 260 pounds, long arms, really athletic too. That's 3 guys to cope with. And now I look at this team and it's like, okay, like Kessler, absolutely. And then I don't know who the 4 is, right? Is it Mamu? And he's physical to a point, but that's not really his thing. But if you're putting Thiero at that spot and he looks like all of 6'7", 225 with muscles growing on top of muscles, then I'm all for playing that overall, and then just seeing what happens in terms of the Lakers getting out in transition and just forcing turnovers overall. I think that also helps with what we've seen from Summer League, and I think that'll carry into the next season, where Summer League team played a lot of 2-3 zone. Like, they just look organized. Like, oh, is this South Bay Lakers? Oh yeah, it is. Well, they're playing 2-3 zone again, and they're being very effective at it. They look very coordinated with their efforts, with how they were shifting between each other and covering defensive space. And in those defensive spaces is where you can force turnovers. Carr showed some of that. I think Thiero made the most out of it, and where he was getting deflections, he was getting a lot of steals, and then they got a lot of that in transition. And if that's what the Lakers are looking for, especially out of a 2-3 zone changeup, like, oh, we need a defensive change. Here's our special teams. Okay, great. Here's your shift. Here's your 2 shifts, whatever else it might look like. And then hopefully down the line, he becomes more of a disciplined man defender and everything else like that. But I'll take a guy that can, make impact defensive plays and just finish and just get out in transition, because the Lakers really need it, especially athletically.
And the more I think about it, like, you could throw out some pretty interesting defensive lineups where you have Adou, Zaire, and Matisse, and you're just going arms and deflections and defensive playmaking. And then you could put Kessler out there, although I think you want to be careful with the spacing. And so I was more envisioning, like, is it Luka or Austin as the head of the snake? And then you have Mamu as the 5, and you could go to some zone, and that's kind of like the bread and butter is the pick and pop. But you have these wings who are going to get after it defensively and cause chaos and be defensive playmakers. Like that sort of bench look, I'm intrigued by. And I'm really intrigued by the Mamu Adou fit, because I think Mamu is going to come off the bench. I don't think Mamu is going to be the starting four. So I think he'll be both the backup, primary backup 4 and primary backup 5. But I think there will be stints where he's playing next to another 4, and that can be Adou, in my opinion. And like just that complementing of their games and like the contrast there, I just really like together, where he can Adou, as he continues to develop, can be that screening rim runner, lob threat 4, but then also defensively can potentially be that rim protector in smaller groups or even in a zone look. So I like that those two as a tandem. I think aside from the obvious of like Luka and Austin or Luka and Kessler or whatever, that might end up being one of the fan favorite tandems, is like Mamu and Adou together, just wreaking havoc on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I'm just really excited that the Lakers have defensive playmaking. It was more of a surprise coming out of Thiero. And now that Zaire on the team and Tyball's on the team too, it's like, okay, well, great. Now we have one defender that can defend down, one defender that can defend up, and then one defender that kind of defends everybody except 5 and Tyball all together. If we need to switch everybody, we can do that. They're all relatively the same length and just different strength sizes. And then so you can switch, you can zone. Even in terms of man defense, it still makes sense, especially out of a bench unit. So I'm looking forward to that overall, and hopefully the Lakers can wreak havoc defensively with a bench lineup like that.
Let's get into AK-47. Shout out to Andrei Kirilenko. Arthur Kaluma, I would say the standout guy of the summer, right? Like, of course, Carr and Adou were the headliners because of the, being on the 15-man roster and just the excitement with what those guys can do. But Arthur Kaluma, wouldn't say came out of nowhere, because he was obviously on the radar with playing with South Bay last year, but really popped in a meaningful way and in an encouraging way. Just earned a two-way spot with, I think, was much deserved. Honestly, was getting a little worried there. Like, why is this taking so long? So he replaces Peter Suter in terms of two-way guys. Lakers now have, I would say, 3 like defensive guys with certain defensive chops in terms of their two-ways, where it is encouraging to see like a type of just like toughness and physicality with all 3 guys that they currently have between Kaluma, AK, and Mañon. But Arthur Kaluma, I heard you on, I believe it was LFR, talking and comparing him to Spencer Jones, which I found as an interesting comparison, especially with Spencer Jones, to me, still being one of the best free agent wing targets out there. But what did you make of Kaluma mania this summer and the way that he played, him earning the two-way spot, and what his potential could be in terms of, I think he'll get some run potentially with the roster?
I was really impressed by how much changed between the end of the South Bay Lakers season all the way into Summer League. I had watched Kaluma at various points throughout last season, and I just kept thinking, oh, he's at the cusp as a wing, and I think I know what he does, but I'm not exactly sure. And then coming into Summer League, he looked like a guy that gained 20 pounds of muscle, and then that helped clarify this archetype of him as a 4. So it's like, well, okay, great. Well, he was a physical wing, now he's like a physical 4. Awesome. And I couldn't specify exactly what his specialty was with South Bay. He did a little bit of cutting. He did a little bit of on-ball dribble penetration. He did a little bit of three-point shooting. And then this summer it was low usage, spot up three-point shooting. And then if I need to attack a closeout, I could do that. This is straight NBA role. If you can shoot 35% behind the arc and you're a physical player in the paint, you have a dub, right? Especially if you have the NBA size. And he looks like an NBA forward that just fulfills those exact things. He competes for rebounding. He moves defensively. He doesn't get lost when he's trying to protect the paint. And he doesn't need the basketball to be effective. And I mean, all of those things, all of those qualities sound like the ideal teammate for Luka in general, right? So when I was thinking of Spencer Jones, I was like, well, doesn't he do the same thing? I got to the point of looking at their collegiate backgrounds, and Spencer Jones, even with a shot that looks a little bit funky sometimes, his three point percentage was a lot more impressive than I thought it would be. The results were better than the aesthetics, which I mean, major props to him. But more importantly, he became this reputable defender just by getting the reps for Denver. And I don't know if Kaluma can just instantaneously be that, oh, I'm a power forward defender, just put me on a power wing and I can handle it. I know he has the strength physically. I know he's not going to back down to anybody. And if he's going to spot up in the corner and just do that and then just do his job, that's kind of the best turnout. It's already difficult to add that much strength in a short period of time. People don't really consider adding that much strength, especially upper body, affecting the shot. He did both, and then he was a more accurate shooter. So this is the best of everything all coming together, and then he earned that two-way contract. So I'm really excited for how the summer turned out for him. Like you mentioned earlier, he earned that two-way. I'm hoping all three of the guys that we've spoken about in Carr, Thiero, and Kaluma all get some sort of NBA level playing time because they all earned it from the summer for what it's worth. So there's going to be times during this upcoming season where, it's approaching All-Star break. Guys don't want to play as many minutes. Maybe you rest the veterans a little bit heading towards All-Star game. If these guys could just show some energy and just be who they are as the guys that we saw from the past 3 weeks, that would be a standout way to get experience, get some playing time, and then hopefully carry that into playoff contention.
I think the Spencer Jones comparison is interesting to me because I feel like it's attainable. Like that is not an unrealistic. Like a lot of people have compared him to Naz Reid, which I see the similarities in the aesthetics of their game. Naz Reid, I just think he's bigger. I think he's more of in that 4-5 mix, right? And I just think he's a more skilled offensive player, a bit more athletic, I guess, factoring in the size, maybe, relatively. But Spencer Jones, like if he could turn into Spencer Jones, I think that's a rotation guy. Maybe more honestly on the Lakers roster, I think he'd be in competition to start at the final spot, which in theory means Kaluma should have a chance here, not to start necessarily, but at least factor into the rotation. And I think, I guess minor differences in my opinion with the two are like, I do think Jones is better defensively, and it's TBD on the shot because we got to see how much of this translates over to the season with Kaluma. But I do like Kaluma more as a driver and as a decision maker. I think there's a little bit more dynamism to his offensive repertoire compared to Jones. So I do like that. It's like I see the similarities in their game, but I also think it's just like a realistic comparison where it's not comparing him to someone like Reid, who I think is just, I don't know if he'll ever be as good as Reid realistically. Like that's a 6th man of the year. And I think starting level player, which Kaluma, I mean, that's a high upside outcome for him, right? Like in terms of, trying to keep it realistic, but I just really like him. And I think when we look at this, I've been talking about how I feel like the Lakers are taking this wing by committee approach right now. And I compare it to, I don't know if you play fantasy football, but sometimes if you don't get the early tight end, you just are cycling through tight ends, and you'll have like a couple bench spots, or you might have a couple tight ends just to hope that someone, maybe a wide receiver goes down, or one of these guys finally pops. They're like a rookie. It's like the second half of the season they break out. And it feels like the Lakers are trying to do that with just all these, drafting Carr and then trying to develop Adou, not trading Vando yet, and then also bringing in Zaire, Matisse, etc. It's like they just have all these 5-6 wing guys that the goal is like if 2 of these guys pop, all of a sudden you have something there with one of those guys potentially being a starter, one of those guys filling out the rest of the bench next to Sexton and Mamu. But with Kaluma, I think the interesting thing is that he might be the best shooter of that group. I think it's between him and Matisse from a percentage standpoint, but I think he's a more willing and aggressive shooter and just overall offensive threat than Matisse. So if he can continue to hold his own defensively and even develop a little bit more on that end, if he does get closer to the Spencer Jones level defensively, I think he's got the offensive game to really make this a conversation, and where we might be talking about some imperfect offensive guys who are really good defensively, he might flip that where it's like this really good offensive player with some imperfection or limitations defensively, but like good enough to play. So that to me is what intrigues me the most, is just like, can he translate the shooting and the decision making, the processing at the NBA level, but also can he continue to develop defensively? Because if he does, I think he becomes a two-way player, and the Lakers I still don't think have many of those.
Yeah, the idea of Spencer Jones, I mean, I really thought of it in terms of like a specific archetype, like, oh, here's a corner forward that defends and shoots threes, and then can he fulfill that? And then when I watched Kaluma during the summer, it's him being physical as a defender. He doesn't have to get a lot of deflections, even though he got his share, and he's just not backing down to anybody. I'm really looking for that kind of level of like fight and push from in terms of defense, because I think as a whole it sets a team, it sets a culture and a tone as a team defensively. Like, oh, that's our fifth guy. He's not backing down to anybody. Nobody else should too, right? So Spencer Jones is definitely the more disciplined defensive player overall. I mean, he would be a great get, but if Kaluma just is that physical guy and then he can just rebound, I don't mind if he gets beat off the dribble off of two lateral steps. That's not gonna bother me. It's gonna bother me if he gets beat and then the shot goes up and then he's not competing for a rebound. Then now it's a problem, because now it's an open opponent allowing to do whatever they want at the rim, right? But if he's helping out around the rim, just pushing off defensively, competing physically in the paint, especially for rebounding, that's all I'm really looking for. And then he has a specific role on the offensive end where spacing is a premium. And I mean, especially at the 4 and 5 slot, in his case 4, that's going to work out. And it just so happens that it's funny, because it's like, well, if you think of unicorn, but then if you think of a unicorn as a role player, what does that look like? It's a defensive player that's just physical and shoots threes, especially at the corner. Well, that's what Spencer Jones does. It's what Kaluma does. If we think about it in terms of like, unicorn amazing terms, okay, we'll go to Wemby, Porzingis, but the job is the same. It's space the floor, it's still be physical, it's still compete for rebounds, and then try to affect things defensively overall. So I really love how the summer turned out for him. I hope he can be this guy, and I hope all these guys get their share of playing time, because, as I mentioned earlier, they all have earned it.
I like it. I like the unicorn comparison there. Then final one before we get into the Q&A, Chris Mañon, who I think really emerged offensively as well in Summer League, continuing with his defensive monstrosity. Like, this dude is just a beast on defense and one of the best point of attack defenders, not officially on an NBA roster, I think, in the world. Like, he's that level of point of attack defender and the defensive playmaking and whatnot. What did you see from Mañon, and what do you think about his viability at the NBA level?
So when I think of Mañon, I try to think of how Alex Caruso made his change from the Laker team, from the South Bay team to the parent team, and what that actually looked like. And then for Caruso, he started out as a point guard, setting the table for everyone, but then he was a defensive player. When he played Summer League in 2017, he was more of an off-ball guy. He wasn't really getting the basketball because Lonzo was running the show. And then when I watched Mañon, it was, oh, well, he's not this amazing offensive rebounding leaper type. That's not his game. But do I think he has enough ball handling ability to attack a closeout? And admittedly, I'm a little unsure. Like, he shoots threes, no problem. I'm comfortable with him taking a shot. He's done the up fake, sidestep, pull up three, and then he's made that shot too. It's when he attacks the closeouts and then he accelerates a step, and then it's like he decelerates 2. It's like 1, 2, and then he looks like slow-mo. And then that last step, he's trying to get vertical, and that's not one of his key strengths. He's kind of ground bound. So he compensates by trying to be clever around the rim, trying to finish on the other side, trying to finish with the left hand, whatever else it might be. But if that's the only limitation to his game, and he's going to be primarily looked at as a 3-point shooter, and I think he'll be a 30% shooter-ish type, then I think the defense is playable. Um, this will take me way back. When I watched Matisse Thybulle out of Washington, right? It was very similar. He was like a wing-sized Mañon, where he was creating turnovers, blocking 3-point shots, doing all of these things. And then when he tried being more aggressive and physical offensively, it just didn't seem natural for him, even though it was just a two-step, drive, attacking, and closeout, and even just shooting a 3-point shot. That's carried over his entire NBA career so far. So when I watch Mañon, he's more aggressive offensively. He doesn't back down to the physicality at both ends of the floor. And I think he's the most comfortable defending similar size and down, which is actually really hard to find at the NBA level. It's one thing to find a switch defender, but then a switch defender to like the fastest guards in the league at point guard. It's like, would I trust Chris on De'Aaron Fox? It sounds like a major leap, but when you're that good of a point of attack defender, Fox is going to burn you at some point. Can you win some of those battles? I think he can. So there were even points later on in summer league where I think his like hands were like a little too fast for the officials, and then he was getting really aggravated. And I saw it several times. It's like, no, that's a clean strip. Oh, that was a clean block. I'm not mad because it's summer league, and they're trying to gain experience too. But at the same time, it's just like, oh man, if he has NBA level officiating with this level of physicality and defensive approach, oh, I'm really in, because now he's like attacking on defense. And it's been a long time since we've seen a Laker defender being able, where we could say like, oh, Caruso attacks you on defense, right? Mañon attacks you on defense. Vanderbilt showed that against Dallas when Luka was in Dallas still, and we saw that special for one game. And it's like, I would love to see that every game. So I know there are a lot of roster positions filled. I think it's one or two guys too many right now.
One,
But
yeah.
If there's some sort of consolidation trade, I would hope that he earns playing time again, because what's going to happen for him in Coachella Valley, right? There's not going to be a 38-inch vert that comes in one season. I would love for that to happen. It's not going to happen. Is he going to become a better 3-point shooter? Yeah, probably. Is he going to be a better playmaker? I guess, but that's not what you're looking at of him. And it's not like he's selfish with the basketball. He moves the ball. So he knows his role. He has a specialty. And it's just really up to the team of, well, do we trust this shot enough? And at some point, you have to play him to find out. And I think he's at that point, because if he's in the G League again, what development is left, unless he becomes like 240 pounds or has a major vert or just these ridiculous physical outcomes that are just really unrealistic. This is who he is, and it's just really hard to get a point of attack defender in the first place. So to kind of sum everything up, if he were a draft pick, he's an early to mid-second rounder, because you're looking for a point of attack defender, and it's hard to find those guys. And if you look at the summer league guys in general, outside of Thiero and Carr, it's like, oh, Kaluma's a late first, early second, and then Mañon is this like early to mid-second round pick, but they look good. Like, those are the guys I would play and try to develop and hopefully turn them into eventual rotation players.
Let's say Rob Pelinka calls you and he's like, we have a move in place. We are going to clear a roster spot, and we're trying to decide between Arthur Kaluma and Chris Mañon for the 15th spot. Who would you recommend to him?
First of all, if he calls me,
let's say it's Dalton and Hardy going out, just for like roster balance,
okay,
or like perspective on the roster. Let's say Dalton and Hardy.
Okay. Before I even think about Kaluma and Mañon, I'm looking at the free agency list. Is there a specific player that we're looking for that fits a specific team need and can contribute immediately? Where somebody gets hurt, this guy's next guy up, and he'll just fill in. Okay. I love these guys, but veteran experience is a different thing altogether, and we're trying to compete. So if that's not available, and then it's Kaluma and Mañon, I want the physicality on the team of both of the players, but it's Kaluma that adds the extra bit of strength in the front line. And that's what I'm really thinking is missing of the current roster. I think when you have Luca as your initiator, like he's a forward size and he's pushing defenders around on offense. It's hilarious sometimes, right? And then Sexton is another guy that's going to drive into defenses and be aggressive with the basketball. Like we have a certain level of physicality on the offensive end in terms of the backcourt. We don't really have that in the front court. And, you know, to tie in with your tight end analogy, like maybe Kaluma just fills in that spot, hopefully at the 4. And if he's, like I said, competing for rebounds and making his shots, the Lakers need that. And if he could give Kessler a little bit more space to operate out of pick and roll, that much better.
I think I'm there too. Like I think there's actually maybe a pathway for Mañon to have more minutes because I think there's less competition for his specific role of if, let's just say Colin Sexton, it's a rough matchup for him and he's just getting torched defensively or Cameron Carr isn't quite ready for early rotation minutes. Like I could see them being like, all right, Mañon, just go out there. It doesn't even have to be Sexton, but it's just like the Lakers in general are struggling to contain some perimeter guy who's just going off. It's like, all right, Mañon, we're throwing you out there, lock him down. And so I could see that. Whereas Kaluma, there's just so much. I think it's a lot of sameness in terms of like the general level of player, but there's just so much competition there where I think he's battling more like 5 or 6 guys that already are on the roster to get into the rotation. So I feel like his pathway is a little trickier to actually earn minutes, albeit if he just shoots the way he shot in the summer, then I think that's an easy, JJ loves shooting. I will continue to repeat that ad nauseum. JJ loves shooting. When he has 2 choices, he always picks the better shooting option. So maybe Kaluma does shoot his way into the rotation, but I think Mañon actually might have a more realistic pathway. But I would agree with you. I think Kaluma is the one to me that I would probably err on that side. But honestly, I would like both of them on the roster, and maybe the Lakers end up clearing multiple spots, and they could add them as the 14th and 15th men. With all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. First one from LA824. Thank you for the super chat. Would participating in the dunk contest help Carr and Adou's careers, or are they better off focusing on development? How about Carr for the 3-point contest?
I mean, if they want to participate in whatever they want to participate in, let them do it. It's their career. Shooting and finishing at the rim is part of what they do best. I'm sure they'll be happy to do it. Development doesn't have to be just specifically working on weaknesses all the time. There's actually something to be said about being in a 3-point contest and kind of getting repetitive shots and using the same motion every single time, especially with a quick release in terms of a 3-point contest. I actually think that matters. So let them do whatever they want to do. If they enjoy it, by all means. But, 3-point shooting is part of development. If they want to be creative with the dunk contest, I'm not going to stop them. The dunk contest could use the help.
Exactly. I don't see any downside here with either of these decisions, even if they fall on their face, literally or figuratively, and just don't perform well. Like it doesn't really make a difference. I couldn't tell you the last 5 years of dunk contest participants. I couldn't tell you the last 5 years the last 3 years, like even the last, I don't even remember who was in it in February. Right. So other than, Jackson, I just think it's only upside, and you potentially make a name for yourself, especially Adou. Look, like thinking about Adou in the dunk contest, I think that would be fun. And if he had that Aaron Gordon-esque, performance, I think that would be something that he carves out a niche for himself as this special dunker, in addition to being on the Lakers and what it means to be a Lakers rotation guy. So I'm for it. I think they should do it if they're invited. In defense of the genre, thank you for the super chat. Guthrie got promoted. Any chance that helps DK? How do you feel about Guthrie's impact potentially on the coaching staff and with development?
I mean, I think he's done a great job with the South Bay team. And then we saw that structure carry into Summer League. If DK was more part of that structure, then I could see more of a direct transfer of like, oh, we played the zone. This is how we execute. These are the plays that we run. This is how we execute. I'm hoping that it helps DK one way or another because Guthrie's coming from a standpoint of these are my young players. This is what we're trying to execute. This is how I develop them into executing these exact things to maximize your strengths. So I'm hoping that's the chance, but I mean, that's really tough. What about you?
I think the ship has sailed with DK. I know there are DK truthers out there, and more power to all of you. You guys are strong, but I just don't see, unless like for him to play. I mean, like I guess he would kind of be in the Kaluma spot in the backcourt conversation, I guess, where I think he's going to be behind multiple guys plus potentially Cameron Carr. And then he's now fighting off, I think even Jaden Hardy, I would put ahead of DK in terms of what each of them has showed just this past season. I think Jaden Hardy is a better player than DK. So he's in, I think, a tough spot where I just think he needs a change of scenery. He needs to put the rescinded trade in the rearview mirror, and he just needs a fresh start somewhere else. And I would love to see him go to a lottery team that lets him play a scoring role off of the bench and just like let the shots fly. And he basically is the garbage time all-star version of himself for some bench shifts in the middle of the game. Like that's what I would like to see for Dalton, but I just don't realistically see it on this team. Like I would say right now, I view him as the 15th man. I think all 14 guys, or I guess technically they're 16th, so I might even say 16th man. But I think if he's on the roster, he will be viewed or treated as like the final guy on the roster as of right now. Then Tai, thank you for the super chat. Where the F are the introductory press conferences? So the Lakers did an introductory press conference with some of us in Vegas. So I was there. It was a rough morning. I was out till like 4:30 in the morning, and then I was at the Wynn, and then I had to go home, sleep for like 4 hours, and go back to the Wynn for a 9:30 press conference. Thank you, Lakers, for that. But they did it with all the guys except for Quentin Grimes. They said there was supposed to be something else for Grimes, and then that was prior to signing Zaire Williams and Matisse Thybulle. So it wasn't the traditional press conference at the facility like we're accustomed to. They are currently renovating the facility, so I think that's a factor within all that. And most of the group was in Vegas at that time when they decided to do the intro presser. So it was an informal, 5 to 7 minutes per guy. Kessler spoke, Sexton spoke, Mamu spoke, Austin spoke to us for the first time post re-signing, and then I think that's it. So they had the Cameron Carr one earlier in the offseason, right before Summer League, and then they just had several of the new guys plus Austin talk to us. So that's the update on that. I believe Lakers Nation it might be on the Lakers YouTube channel as well, but Lakers Nation, I believe, was there, took video, so you could check out those pressers there. Next one from Zinc. Thank you for the super chat. Luka posted a 116.2 defensive rating on the court versus 117.9 off. Was that mostly due to the Lakers fighting switches and keeping him on forwards, or did Luka genuinely improve enough to become a neutral defender? What say you?
I noticed in the second half of the season last year, he was more of a physical defender and then just trying to get more deflections. And then that really started to show in March when they had a series of wins to try and compete for better playoff position. Every time I think of Luka playing defense, it's this strange thing of where we think of a defender as, a super quick lateral guy and he's attacking defensively like Dort or Kason Wallace or whatever else it might be. Luka is a positional defender that doesn't really give ground unless he really needs to. And then he has really quick hands. And when he does those things defensively, that's when it shows. Most of the time he's thought of as a helper, kind of someone who runs in the background to force a turnover or whatever else it might be. But usually when he's faced up in a 1v1 situation, he does a pretty surprising job of just holding his ground and at least buying defensive time for teammates to go help out and rotate as well. That's why there's a subtle improvement in that on-court defensive rating versus off. But that's kind of all I'm really expecting out of him defensively, especially considering how heavy the usage is for him offensively. It's just really, really difficult to have that kind of conditioned athlete that's high intensity on both ends of the floor. And usually in these with high usage players, they can do it situationally, a possession or two at a time, and then just go into the background again and rotate as necessary, provide defensive help as necessary, and then maybe be more prominent later. But that's what I've seen out of Luka overall. How about you?
I agree. I think Luka to me was much better in the second half of the season than the first half of the season defensively. I think, I mean, if you look at most defensive metrics, they paint him as somewhere around, I think most, it's more like slightly below average to somewhere around average, but like he's not this detrimental defender, at least in terms of the data, the way that some of his harshest critics will try to paint him as. I think the lowlights can be loud with Luka, right? Like that's the thing where it's like for some guys, their lowlights, their limitations are just louder than others. Like I've often referenced Marc Gasol. If you actually looked at the Lakers were defending at a very high level. They had the league's best defense that season, in part because of the impact that Marc Gasol had. He had one of the best on-off differentials on the team in terms of defense, but a few times a game, Marc Gasol would just get blown by on the perimeter, and he'd come up, to touch in the pick and roll, and someone just gets around his leg and blows by him. And then those are the clips that people will post. Oh, Marc Gasol sucks. Marc Gasol's too slow. Marc Gasol can't defend. And it's like, you're not seeing all the smart positional stuff that is actually showing up in terms, if you watch the film, or if you just look at the data and seeing that, wow, the Lakers are the best defense and they're all actually defending better with Marc Gasol on the floor. So I think with Luka, there's an element of his mistakes are loud, and whether it's the blow-bys or just failing to keep ball containment guys in front of him. But I think the off-ball defense, the physicality, the defensive rebounding, like that's a big part of defense that I feel like gets overlooked, is you actually have to finish the possession. And Luka's if he's a guard, he's a 100th percentile defender. A defensive rebounder. If he's a wing, he's like a 99th percentile defensive rebounder. So in either configuration of how you want to classify Luka, he's an elite defensive rebounder. So I think that between the defensive rebounding, the deflections, the steals, the rotating, and more of a helper, like he should be more in a help role, right? He's not a stopper. He's not an on-ball guy. You do want to hide him or put him in certain spots. But if you are doing that, I think he's fine. And we've seen, to this point, or even just some of the different defensive combinations, like he can be part of a successful defense. And you saw the Lakers' success in March. He was playing almost 40 minutes a night in March, and the Lakers had, were there as a top 10 defense. So it's possible. I think that, it's obviously about consistency, and it's about, I think, overall engagement with the group. Because it's easy to point to Luka, but I think it was a group wide thing where like that December through February stretch where they went, I believe 19 and 20 was just this middle malaise of the season where they just had no interest in playing defense. And I think, he was a part of that for sure, but I thought the second half of the season was much better than the first. And then final super chat from Zinc. Thank you for the follow-up here. My concern is JJ could bench Thiero after a slow shooting start, making every opportunity a battle. Would you move Thiero in 2 seconds for PJ Washington?
I'm biased. You need to answer this first.
I don't know. It's tough, right? Because I guess it depends how close you feel the Lakers would be with PJ. I still think I might stand pat, to be honest. And I say this as someone who's been advocating for LA to empty the clip from a draft asset standpoint for PJ specifically. And I am on the optimistic side with PJ. I just also think that even if you add PJ to this group, I think to me it would solidify them as the third best team in the West by like a clear margin. And I don't think anyone else would be on their level, but there are still two teams ahead of the West, or ahead of them in the West. Now you can still add that non-taxpayer MLE guy next summer. And I think you are closer in terms of your timeline and trajectory to being on the OKC San Antonio level. So maybe you are just a piece away of you get that right final piece, and all of a sudden you feel like your five can go toe to toe with their five and it's a real battle. I guess that would be the argument for it. But there's part of me that's like, if you keep Adou, maybe he just develops into that player, or maybe you just don't have to give up Adou for PJ. And that's a part of this as well. Like I would prefer to keep Adou or Cameron Carr unless it's like a player who clearly elevates them to a different level. I think PJ elevates them. I don't know if it's like to a different level, if that, like, I feel like it just takes them from maybe in the mix with Denver and Minnesota, and you can kind of rank those three teams whichever way you want to rank them, to like clearly ahead of those teams, but there's still that gap to OKC and San Antonio. I feel like it would need to be a player where I would walk away from the trade being like, all right, maybe they're still not quite to OKC San Antonio level, but I see like they're kind of there. They got a better than a puncher's chance against those guys. If not, I think I keep Adou and keep Carr. I would just want someone better than PJ, basically.
Yeah, the hardest part for me when thinking about these trades, especially with watching guys that we've liked and then we've seen them develop in such a short period of time, is if these guys are included in a trade, does it move the needle enough for us to change our minds about their level of contention, right? So I don't look at it like, oh, the Lakers need to win next year or the year after. I think of it as this 4-year window that the Lakers are looking at. And there are a lot of options that can happen within those 4 years to change the team dramatically and make a move that eventually moves the needle. Or these guys that have developed within the team move the needle of the team altogether. It's one of those things where, like, I kind of don't remember what OKC looked like when Dort was still a rookie or a second-year player. Like, they were a competitive team, but they weren't the championship contenders that you think of them now. And then Dort became a critical piece into turning into like a fifth starter and a higher-end defensive player. The defensive tools were absolutely there. And then he helped elevate that team into a different tier of competitiveness. And that's where they became this championship team. Sure, Dort just got released, and then they have to restructure because of the second apron or whatever CBA rules are making things so punitive for all the teams now. But he was a part of that. And if I think of Thiero as like, okay, let me just make this exaggerated comparison. I know I've made it before, but what if you had Dort, but he was 6'7" and really athletic? What does that look like? You kind of get that in Thiero, where he's a guy that defends wings and, in Dort's case, guards as well. Thiero is more of like a 4-through-2 defender. The motor is absolutely there. The physicality is absolutely there. The athleticism is absolutely there. Dort took years to develop his three-point shot. Derrick Jones Jr. took years to develop his three-point shot. You have this guy that isn't waiting, and you're just waiting on basically one or two skills before he can actually become this fifth player that moves the needle of the entire team. And that's just one guy. Imagine if two guys hit. Now it's a whole different perspective, and you're not even thinking about PJ Washington. You're thinking, oh, well, now we got to keep these guys, and then why are we trading seconds? We don't even have to trade picks anymore. And all we have to do is just be a little bit patient. Maybe we see something with player development. Maybe it takes another year or two. But man, if they're on this trajectory and it's a specific rate, and things are working out for him, and you can see the improvement, and it happens within season, which is a critical part of development altogether, you're not thinking about a third, fourth, or fifth option player of another team anymore. You're thinking about your own guys and just trying to keep them. And I think that changes the culture of the team overall because, hey, we developed our guys. Look how they turned out. We're going to develop the next set of guys into this. And then you're going to see this rotation of end of bench guys developing into bigger roles altogether while still being a competitive team. That's kind of the vision I have for this Laker team as a whole. So when I see Thiero in 2 seconds for PJ, do I think that's enough to compete against OKC and San Antonio? I wish it were. I don't think it is.
And look, if the Lakers, I guess I'm pretty close to 50-50 here. Like I lean more on the side of not trading Adou, but if this was a trade the Lakers did, I wouldn't flame them for it. I wouldn't really critique them for it. I would understand the logic. I would also assume that Luka would have had a say, have had a say in the situation in terms of I'm trying to win a championship now. I want the win now move. And PJ is also young enough where he fits the Luka. I think he's 27, going to be 28. Luka's 27. Austin's 28. So he fits that general range with those guys. And then, a bit older than some of the new guys that the Lakers brought in. It's a tough one. And look, the chat has been on fire about it. A couple people are upset about your Dort comparison. They don't like Adou being compared to Dort.
It's just a role.
It's like, yeah.
Just Dort's.
I get your point.
Yeah.
I also think there's an element of like you need young cheap talent. It's real, like look at what OKC and San Antonio have all across their roster. It's a bunch of young cheap talent outperforming their contracts, and the Lakers right now, honestly, like if you put Adou and Carr to the side, if it was like, hey, Adou, Carr, and a second or two for PJ. That'd be an aggressive price from the Lakers side, but like, let's all right, win now. Like you get your starting four. Okay. What's left from like a young player perspective? We like Kaluma, we like Mañon, but those are more role player types that we don't even know are for certain going to pop as like rotation guys. I think Carr and Adou will be rotation guys at a minimum, but I think they also have the potential to grow into potential starters in best case scenario. So I could go either way on this one, but I understand why so many people are split on it. Like I would be split on it too. And then Kristen Lee with the final one here. Thank you for the super chat. Is JJ's vision shoot a lot, grab rebounds, get steals, and win the possession battle? Is JJ going for an interchangeable roster build, OKC style? If so, Mañon equals Grimes and Kaluma equals Mamu as a 4. Agree.
In general, I don't know if it's specifically about going to an OKC style. I just see a shifted priority of what the Lakers were in 2020 and what they were last year, and then the change in athleticism and age and the ability to force turnovers as opposed to being a dominant defensive team that got defensive rebounds and had one guy in transition in LeBron in 2020. And then the past several years, it's been the Lakers being a more physical team because it's LeBron at 4 and, Luka at point. And there's a lot of basically bigger wing size guys on the floor at all given times. And even Reeves was a smaller player at 6'4", 200 plus, whatever it might be. So there's going to be a stylistic change. I think we see some of that with, as I mentioned before, with the South Bay Lakers in terms of implementing zone defenses, guys that aren't positional defenders, they're more defensive playmakers. And then, I've thought about this in terms of, well, if you can't defend the guy in front of you, you can have a lot of guys help rotate and then recover quickly. And then this current Laker team has like a lot of that all of a sudden. It's where, hey, Thibault has ground coverage and he creates turnovers at any different point of attack along the perimeter. Hey, it's Zaire doing something similar. He has a little bit skinnier frame, but he also forces turnovers and maybe he defends a point guard or two. Maybe he chases a little bit. And then Thiero has done what he's been able to show out of Summer League against 4s and 3s. And now we're trying to figure out exactly where Carr kind of fits in with that, because he's kind of been the like a jumpy defender who kind of helps out with what he can, and he's more of a shot blocker because of it. I don't really see him like anticipating steals. That wasn't really his defensive strength. He just really liked defend or contesting shots at the rim for whatever reason. Like, that's what's natural to him. Great. There's a way to implement that kind of defensive talent within a particular zone defense, especially in terms of ground coverage. So when we're talking about Zaire, Thibault, Thiero, and then Carr, and then these are basically more or less interchangeable wings around Luka and or Austin. And then you have Kessler behind. It's like, okay, well, we try to make our defensive plays along the perimeter, and then if we get blown by, guess who's behind us? It's the guy with the 9'4" standing reach who block shots and also rebounds. So good luck. And then you take your chances with that, and then that's just the NBA. So is that specifically an OKC style? I don't know. I just know that it's a defensive style that I think makes sense for physicality in the NBA and what it means to win a possession battle when it's not directly about forcing a bad shot and getting a defensive rebound. This is more like, oh, we want to force a turnover before you even get the shot up. So that part I absolutely understand. That's what makes sense for this current roster construction.
I really like this question, and it's something I've been thinking more about. I agree with everything you said in terms of I think the Lakers will be relying more on funneling guys to Kessler, and along the way, it's going to be good luck trying to dribble past us or through the thicket of arms or making the driving kick reads and whatnot. It's almost like here's this pathway, and then we're just gonna have a bunch of arms in your way, and if you somehow get through, you're there getting your shot blocked. Because I think one thing that does stand out with this group is there's like two like clear weaknesses in my opinion with this group defensively, in terms of I don't think they have a even good collection. I wouldn't even go as far as to say like great, but like good collection of guys who can keep the ball in front of them. I think that's a clear thing with like just point of attack, wing stopping defense. I think these are guys who will be blown by, but the key will then be having your system in place to help out and try to cause chaos, play make out of those blow-bys. But then two, I think they are still a bit light on the defensive glass depending on like who ends up in the rotation. Like I think there's a version of this roster where if Looney's not in the rotation and it is Mamu as both the backup 4 and 5, and maybe Vando or and or Adou kind of get pushed to more the periphery of like 10th, 11th man, and it is like the projected starters with Mamu, Sexton, Carr, Matisse, Zaire, that's a little light on the defensive glass. Like most of those guys are on the slender side. Most of those guys are not good rebounders for their position. Like you have Kessler, you have Luka, you have Mamu. Everyone else, I think Austin competes well. Jake is a good offensive rebounder for a wing, okay rebounder defensively. But I just look at that group and I'm like, you need, and that's where I look at Adou or I look at Vando as the guys that, and I think more so Adou is like, you can come in and play a pretty big role here if you can continue to grow offensively and be disciplined and make the right reads, because they need that athleticism, that power, that rebounding. And it could be Vando if he has a bounce back season, but I also look at Adou as a guy who could really address that need.
What just came to me now is the idea of, these aren't the most physical wings. They were just the best available kind of like defensive wings that the Lakers could acquire. And you had mentioned defensive rebounding, and I was thinking about, well, what if the opponent just gets an offensive rebound and then you have 4 help defenders that just collect stocks, just attack the basketball, and then that's their way of flipping turnovers, because it's a rare and hard to find defensive trait. Like Ron Harper, dating back to when he won the championship in 2000 for the Lakers, one of the things he was best at was stripping the basketball right underneath the basket every single time. Like, boom, your offensive rebound doesn't mean anything. well, what if there were two or three guys that could actually do similar and attack the basketball as soon as you get the offensive rebound? Is it really an offensive rebound at that point? You like, did you get the possession? Did you even get the shot you want? Like, that's where the chaos is actually created. So it's definitely a different way of attacking the possession battle, but at least there is the defensive talent to actually execute that. And it's not just one guy, it seems like two pairs of guys at the wing positions that can do that.
And this is a callback to something you were discussing earlier with the Lakers 2-3 zone and what we saw from them in Summer League. And then final one from Bri. Thank you for the super chat. Sims for Connect and picks, then maybe Obi Toppin. I would do Dalton in a second for Sims, but even then, because the Lakers have so few draft assets, I'm okay with dumping Dalton or Hardy if it leads to a different move. Like, one thing I've discussed is for Kuminga now, Atlanta has 17 guys under contract, so it really makes no sense. It makes no sense for them to take back a player at all because the 17 doesn't even factor in Kuminga. So that's just adding an extra player if they take anyone back, because right now they have Kuminga's rights. They obviously haven't signed him. So if you're going to do a Kuminga trade or even a Dallas trade, because Dallas is also right at the maximum with 15 guys, like them taking back one player, let alone two, which you would have to put out there to salary match, just doesn't really make sense. So you're going to have to reroute that guy to a third team. So if it's something like that and you can attach an asset to get off the guy to help get someone else, I like that. If it's attaching it for, I think, a guy who's a backup who might not even play in the playoffs, and the Lakers would just condense the rotation and it would be Kessler and Mamu, and that's probably it at the 5, or maybe they have like a small ball look as well, depending on the matchup. I just don't know if, like, you might need that second at the deadline. You might need that second next summer. And that's where I don't know if Sims, well, I think he's better than Looney, especially in the context of what the Lakers need from that rim running, athletic, lob threat center type. I don't know if it moves the needle enough for me to warrant giving up a second. So if they want Connect, if they want Hardy, and it's just that type of swap, I'd be cool with it. But yeah, I think I would only want to trade draft capital if it led to a more meaningful addition. And then Toppin, I just don't think he's a starter I don't think he's good enough defensively for what the Lakers need.
Yeah, specifically for this roster, I mean, my biggest concerns are with both forward positions, basically. And if there's a trade in place that helps find a starter at either forward position, then I would save the picks for that particular trade. I love Sims and Obi Toppin. I mean, these were guys I mentioned before, like DeAndre Ayton even got signed in the first place because I knew that they were going to be, more affordable contracts. I know Sims is basically like a Jackson Hayes, but like bigger and a better rebounder version of that. And then Obi Toppin has plenty of playoff experience with the Pacers, and he also has 3-point range, so it actually does make sense, even though he's more of a like lanky 5'4", but he runs the floor. He's kind of a defensive playmaker in his own right, getting out in transition. If that was enough to, as you mentioned earlier, move the needle for the Lakers to kind of upgrade them to a higher contention level, then I'd be for it. But the hardest part about this point of the offseason is now that the cupboard is mostly emptied out and there's only so many picks available and then so many assets left, it's like, oh, we need to make the right trade. What is the right trade for the right player that moves the needle to move the Lakers from here to here? And if it can't, I wish it could be for a bench guy. That means the Lakers would be a lot closer in terms of contention, but just can't. If you're telling me, hey, a starter, boom. If you're telling me it's two guys that are kind of like borderline starters, yeah, I can buy that. But in this case, I mean, as much as I love those guys, might have to pass on it.
That's the thing. I want to be clear here. I like Sims. I think Connect and a second rounder is fine value for Sims. I think the issue, to your point, is the opportunity cost here of you only have so many remaining draft assets that you can spend over the next calendar year. And if you spend one on a backup 5 when you still need either, at a minimum, I think another like starting level wing, but potentially 2 more starters, depending on how ready Grimes is for this moment. That like you kind of need to save those chips for that. And you're going to get a second next summer in terms of like access to another second. So that'll be good. That'll help a little bit, but you also might have to attach a second to dump someone like that. That's another thing looming here. If they don't do the PJ Washington, Kuminga 2-for-1 trade and get off of a player that way, if I'm team X and they're like, hey, do you want Dalton Connect for free or Jaden Hardy for free? I just look at their cap sheet. I'm like, no, I want a 2nd round pick. I don't think those guys are good enough to be no brainer. Just take them on for nothing. So they might already have to attach a 2nd round pick to dump someone if they don't dump someone in a 2-for-1. And so at that point, you're now spending, let's say it's Hardy because Connect's going out in this case. You spent a 2nd on Sims and a 2nd on dumping. And now you have 1 second left and 1 swap left. And you did not add like a meaningful addition, in my opinion, really to the roster. So that's where in like a vacuum, I like the deal and I would like adding Sims. I just don't know if you can spend your draft capital on a player who isn't like a locked in every night rotation guy in the playoffs. And I don't know that Sims would be that necessarily. And ideally like a starter, honestly, because you're gonna have to cobble together. I think like realistically 3 of these 4 draft assets are going to be required to add a starting level player at a minimum, if not all 4. And if you spend that on Sims, now that's another pick you just don't have. So yeah, but I like Toppin too. I think Toppin's more of a bench guy.
Yep.
Okay. Then if you got to go, you can go. We got 2 more as we were talking here.
Sure.
Sound Automotive Group, thank you for the super chat. If Miami were to make a run at Kyrie for LeBron, how would you feel about Andrew Wiggins? If it meant Luka would likely need to guard up in size. Sign me up for that problem. I will take the Andrew Wiggins problem in a heartbeat. I think he is meaningfully better than anyone else the Lakers have in that role on this roster, including Quentin Grimes. If you want, I mean, they're not technically playing the same position, but just like that general wing defender, 2-way perimeter guy, Wiggins would be a meaningful upgrade in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, sign me up too. One of the things that about this particular roster is we're talking about deflections and steals and defensive playmaking. We need guys to stay in front of the point of attack first before we do the defensive playmaking. Wiggins is exactly the kind of defensive wing that we'd be looking at to create those defensive plays in the first place. That'd be a great get if it was possible.
I also would say, like, to be clear, the Lakers don't have the flexibility to just take on Andrew Wiggins, and there are the salary matching trade rules if they are taking on a player like Wiggins. They're now post Matisse signing less than $9 million. It's little over $8 million under the first apron. So it's not just the salary matching in terms of trade. It's actually salary matching, keeping them under the first apron is its own thing, where obviously you could dump some guys or something to help clear that. But I would say it's highly unlikely, in my opinion, that they could pull off some sort of move to get Andrew Wiggins. But if it was possible, I would do it in a second. And then final one from Easy Peasy. Thank you for the super chat. How much of the offseason messes are Kuminga's agent? Surely part of the job is to lay out the reality contract-wise, etc. They can't both be so unaware. It's difficult to say, right? But I will say there's a pattern here. There's a bit of a trend in terms of how things went last summer with the Warriors and just some of the stuff that was leaking and coming out that oftentimes, depending on the information, you could kind of tell which side is leaking. Is it the agent or is it the team, right? Like who's the information benefiting? And I think there's been some trends over at least the last 2 summers, but I really think it's extended beyond that. So I mean, look, I think he's trying to do his job and get the best possible contract, the best possible situation for his client. So it's understandable, but at least with where things are right now, it doesn't feel like things have gone in their favor, and he will potentially have to settle for a lesser contract than they initially anticipated. Anything to add, or are you good on that one?
I'm good.
Okay, fair. All right,
me
man.
Me and agents, man, that's a whole different world. I just covered the draft.
Fair. Well, Mike, this was fun. I'm glad we did this roughly a month after our last conversation. We will have to check in with you around training camp and the preseason once we see what the young guys look like and as they continue to develop and we get a better sense of where they're at in the pecking order. But anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
No, just find me at lakersdraft.substack.com. It's free. I'm just there to share information. I haven't written a lot lately. I've done a lot more podcasts, and I hope everybody's catching up and enjoying it.
Awesome, man. Well, I will have it linked in the show notes below. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. A quick update. I am going to Puerto Rico tomorrow, so I will be out of commission through next Tuesday. I have a mailbag dropping potentially tomorrow, if not Friday. And then probably TBD on Lakers Collective next week, at least to start the week. But going to be spending some time with my family. It's my mom's birthday. We are Puerto Rican, or my mom's side is Puerto Rican. So really excited to be there. I haven't been there in 16 years. It's been a very long time. So very excited for that. But again, shout out to everybody. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back later in the week virtually, back in person next week. Talk to you all then. Enjoy your weekend.